It had been 5 long years since Adrian Blackwood had set foot in this town. 5 years since he had walked away from everything, his past, his love, and the future he had once dreamed of. Now, as his luxury car rolled to a stop outside a quiet, little cafe on the corner of Maple Street, he felt something strange stir in his chest. Nostalgia? Regret? He wasn't sure. But what he was sure of was that he had never expected to see her again. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Maybe it was the exhaustion from back-to-back meetings, the weight of running a multi-billion-dollar empire. But no, there she was, Evelyn Carter, the woman he had once been ready to spend his life with. She was sitting by the window, her brown curls catching the sunlight, her soft laugh filling the air as she spoke to the small boy beside her. Adrian's stomach clenched. He hadn't seen her in years, yet she still had that same warmth, that quiet grace that had once drawn him in so effortlessly. But what made his breath catch wasn't just her presence. It was the child sitting next to her. The boy couldn't have been older than 4 or 5. His dark hair was tousled, his green eyes bright with curiosity. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he looked. Adrian felt like he was staring at a younger version of himself. His pulse thundered in his ears. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. But the resemblance was undeniable. The sharp cheekbones, the arch of his brow, even the way he furrowed his tiny forehead as he focused on something on his plate. It was like looking in a mirror. From years ago, Adrian's grip tightened on the car's steering wheel. A million thoughts raced through his mind. Was it just a coincidence? Or had Evelyn been hiding something from him all these years? His heart pounded. He needed answers. And he needed them now. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of the car and made his way toward the cafe, his mind battling between shock, hope, and a fear he couldn't quite place. But one thing was certain. His life was about to change forever. Adrian's footsteps felt heavier with each step as he approached the café. His heartbeat echoed in his ears, his mind racing with questions he didn't know if he was ready to face. 5 years ago, he had left this town, left her, thinking it was the only way. He had believed that walking away was the right thing to do, even if it had broken his heart. But now, standing just a few feet away from Evelyn and the boy who looked exactly like him, he wasn't so sure anymore. As he pushed open the door, the small bell above it chimed, drawing Evelyn's attention. The moment her eyes met his, time seemed to freeze. Her soft smile faded, replaced by something unreadable. Shock, maybe even fear. Adrian felt it too, a gut-wrenching sensation twisting inside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The past hung between them, unspoken and heavy. Then Evelyn quickly turned to the boy, her fingers brushing over his dark curls as if grounding herself. "Evelyn," Adrian finally said, his voice steadier than he felt. She swallowed hard, her lips parting slightly before she found her voice. "Adrian, Before she could say anything more, the little boy tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, who's that?" His voice was small, innocent. "Mommy." The word sent a shiver down Adrian's spine. Evelyn hesitated for only a second before giving the boy a soft smile. "Just an old friend, sweetheart." Adrian's chest tightened. An old friend? That was all he was now? But before he could react, the boy's wide green eyes locked onto him, filled with curiosity. "I know you," the boy said suddenly, tilting his head. "I saw you before." Adrian's breath caught. "You did?" The boy nodded. "Yeah. In the mirror." He giggled, as if it were the funniest thing in the world, before reaching for his juice box. Adrian's throat went dry. He had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals, making decisions that changed industries, but nothing had ever shaken him like this moment. He turned back to Evelyn, his jaw tightening. "Can we talk?" His voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the urgency behind it. Evelyn hesitated. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the way her fingers tensed around her coffee cup, After a moment, she nodded. Okay. She turned to the boy. Noah, sweetheart, can you wait here for a little while? I'll be right outside. Noah. His name was Noah. The boy nodded, completely unfazed, and went back to sipping his juice. But Adrian could hardly breathe as he followed Evelyn outside, the fresh air doing little to calm the storm inside him. As soon as they were out of earshot, he turned to her. Evelyn, he said, his voice low. Is he mine? Her eyes darted away, but she didn't answer. Tell me, he pressed, his heart pounding. I need to know. She took a deep breath, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to shield herself from what was coming. Then, finally, she met his gaze. Yes, she whispered. The world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. He had spent 5 years believing he had lost everything. 5 years thinking he had left behind nothing but memories. And now he had a son. His entire life had just changed in an instant. How? Why didn't you tell me? His voice was hoarse, filled with disbelief. Evelyn's eyes darkened with something. Pain, maybe even anger. Because you left, Adrian, she said, her voice shaking. You walked away without looking back. And when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know how to reach you. You had shut me out. Adrian clenched his jaw. He wanted to argue, to tell her that he had his reasons, but deep down, he knew she wasn't wrong. He had left without a trace, buried himself in work, convinced himself it was for the best. And now he had missed 5 years of his son's life. He ran a hand through his hair, his mind spinning. Evelyn, But before he could finish, a small voice called out, Mommy. They both turned to see Noah standing by the cafe door, his little face scrunched up in confusion. Adrian's heart clenched. Evelyn took a shaky breath before glancing back at him. We can talk more later, she murmured. But right now, I need to focus on him. Adrian nodded slowly, watching as she walked back to their son. Their son. The words felt foreign yet powerful. As he stood there watching Noah chatter away to his mother, Adrian knew one thing for certain. He wasn't walking away this time. No matter what it took, he was going to be part of his son's life, and nothing was going to stop him. Adrian couldn't sleep that night. He sat alone in his hotel room, staring out at the city lights, his mind racing with everything that had happened. He had a son, a little boy who had been growing up without him for 5 years. 5 years of first words, first steps, birthdays, moments he would never get back. The thought made his chest tighten. He had built an empire, conquered the business world, but none of it mattered compared to what he had lost. And now he had a choice. He could walk away again, let Evelyn keep raising Noah without disrupting their lives, or he could fight to be the father his son deserved. The next morning, he found himself outside Evelyn's house. He hadn't called ahead. He knew she might. Refused to see him, but he needed to try. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept either. Adrian, she sighed. What are you doing here? I need to talk, he said. Really talk. She hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. The house was warm, cozy, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile life he had built for himself. There were toys scattered in the living room, drawings pinned to the fridge, evidence of a life filled with love and laughter. Noah wasn't in sight, probably still asleep. That gave Adrian a moment to gather his thoughts. I was wrong to leave, he admitted. I thought I was doing the right thing back then. He shook his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. What matters is that I missed 5 years of my son's life, and I don't want to miss another day. Evelyn crossed her arms, studying him carefully. And what exactly are you saying, Adrian? I'm saying I want to be in his life, he said firmly. I don't want to be a stranger to my own son. I want to know him. I want him to know me. She let out a slow breath. It's not that simple. You can't just walk back in and expect everything to be okay. I know, he said, but I'll do whatever it takes to earn my place. I don't want to take him away from you, Evelyn. I just want to be his father." Evelyn's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw the pain she had been carrying. "He's a good kid, Adrian. He's smart and kind, and he asks about his father more often than I know how to answer." Adrian swallowed hard. The thought of Noah wondering about him, not knowing why he wasn't there, broke him. "Then let me be there now," he said. "Please." Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted them. "Mommy?" They turned to see Noah standing at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Evelyn glanced at Adrian, then back at Noah. She knelt down and held out her hand. "Come here, sweetheart." Noah hesitated before stepping closer. His gaze flickered between his mother and Adrian. "Is he still your friend?" Evelyn looked up at Adrian, something unreadable in her eyes. Then, she turned back to her son, with a soft smile. "Yes," she said gently, "and he's also someone very special." Noah blinked up at Adrian, then tilted his head. "Are you my dad?" Adrian felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. His throat tightened, but he forced himself to speak. "Yes, buddy, I am." There was a beat of silence. Then, to Adrian's surprise, Noah smiled. "Okay." Just like that. No anger, no confusion, just a child's pure acceptance. And in that moment, Adrian knew he would never leave again. Evelyn wiped at her eyes before standing up. She met Adrian's gaze, and this time, there was no more hesitation. "Let's take this one step at a time," she said softly. Adrian nodded, his chest lighter than it had been in years. "One step at a time." Noah beamed, then grabbed Adrian's hand as if it had always belonged there. And for the first time in a long time, Adrian knew exactly where he was meant to be.